Hello and welcome to today's live stream. Today we're going to be talking about technical SEO, but don't be too scared. We're not going to be talking all codes and snippets. We'll be talking about technical SEO for content people. Our guest today is Jamie Indigo. I'm super excited to pick her brain because she comes from a content background, but also works deeply in technical SEO with clients. So I think she's going to be the perfect person to sort of translate some of the nuance of the technical pieces of SEO that us content people should be thinking about and should understand, and hopefully which ones we actually don't have to worry too much about. So before we get into canonical tags and crawl errors and all that good stuff, I just want to make my normal pitches here. So first and foremost, please like our video here to help other people find the stream and our channel. If you're not already subscribed to our YouTube channel, we host live sessions, Q&As, and all kinds of great stuff on content marketing, SEO, and all of those related topics here all the time. So go ahead and subscribe and get notified about future upcoming sessions. Lastly, I'll just mention that if you'd like to join our community, top of the funnel, it's a free Slack community for content marketers, SEO folks. We've got all kinds of people, nearly 1,500 members, including in-house folks, agency owners, freelancers, all kinds of people. So if you want to learn more about content marketing, you want to get into technical SEO, or you want to figure out how to, get better clients or whatever it is, join our community, yesoptimist.com/tofu. Again, it's a free Slack community. You can join there. And then finally, I just want to recognize our sponsor of today's session, Clearscope. Check out the details in the description here of the video to learn a little bit more about Clearscope. We use Clearscope as part of our workflow with the Optimist team to optimize content and really, marry together the SEO and the content writing portion, which can always be tricky, but they make it really easy to build optimized outlines, but also create great content for humans first. And yeah, would definitely encourage you to check out Clearscope if you've not already. Again, hit the link in the description below. Thank you to them for sponsoring today's session. All right, with all of the advertisements and whatnot out of the way, I'm really excited again to bring on our guest today. Jamie Indigo is a technical SEO consultant at DeepCrawl, and she's author of the weekly SEO newsletter called Rich Snippets. So without further ado, please meet Jamie.
Hey, Tyler, thank you so much for having me here today.
Yeah, thank you again so much for joining us. As I said, super excited to pick your brain, and I know you kind of come from a content background, so I want to dig into that a little bit more, and maybe we can just start there. So yeah, tell us a little bit about your background and how you kind of got started with content in the first place.
Oh, my friends, I went to school to be a writer. I wanted to write plays. You were looking at the first playwright to win at Sigma Tau Delta, the International English Honor Society's conference. It was a whole thing. And then graduated in May of 2008. And hold times are longer than normal to explain to your student loan people how you want to pay them, but you also want to eat. So yeah, proud writing major of a state school.
All right. And so I guess what, as you were sort of going down that path, like what piqued your interest, or how did you move into SEO broadly and some of the technical topics?
So I began blogging because I wanted food. And I ended up becoming a car blogger. I ended up writing about Toyota pickup trucks and going to these shops to like shoot a bull bar install. So my boss would go out and reach out. He would arrange everything up. I'd show up at the shop, come in from the back door, knock on it, and the door. You're Jamie? I'm Jamie. The auto blogger? Sup? And I'd hang out with them and, document how to install these different products and how terrible some of them were. Those are my favorites. I had fun writing it, even though hello, everyone. Tank says hi. Even though I wasn't a vehicle expert, there was still a lot of fun to be had in it. And of course, Writers are vain. I want to know, do people like it? Did you like my work? Do you think my words are pretty? So I learned how to look at analytics, and then I would see these articles that were terrible. People didn't even know what an Oxford comma was, and they would have more traffic than me. And I was huffy. I was huffy about this. Yeah, that led to me going, well, why? And my boss going, search engines, and they going, like, what? I'm learning. Oh, I can give them hints and clues. I can guide them. I can show them that this is far better content. Yeah, that was my very beginning.
That's awesome. I feel like, you know, my personal bias is going to show here, but I feel like, yeah, the people who have sort of had to learn SEO for their own purposes, I feel like that's the best way to do it, because then you really do get like the picture of like, okay, how does this actually impact me, and why would I care about this, and you know, how does it impact the business, and those kind of things.
Yeah, I didn't even know what I was doing as SEO for a long time. I didn't know there was a name for it. I'm like, yeah, I knew these cool little tricks you can zhuzh over here and do over there. Huh.
What was like do you have like a first memory of like trying an SEO thing, or like applying something that you thought was going to help?
It actually came from a headhunter. She was the one who was like, all of your tricks are actually SEO, but because it was a really terrible economy, and all these were like projects and one-offs. She was like, I need you to go home and register a business name and then put everything in this resume under there. And I'm going to get you this interview. So I did it. It took me 15 minutes to register my business name. No one checks that. Like, wait, you did all this work in a business registered 15 minutes ago? No, they don't look. They're like, oh, look, it's all there. So a headhunter taught me how to business lie in the best way possible. And I got that job.
Nice.
And from then it was like, oh, look at all this data. Look at these things. Look at this machinations. And I started as a content marketer. My job included looking at the e-commerce sites' top keywords, and suddenly they started hemorrhaging out. Like, this was like number 2 restaurant supplies and equipments on the internet. It was a big deal. Us in K-Town, we were always battling it out. And we started hemorrhaging out, and then it became a new rabbit hole of like, wait a second, why? And I spent like 11 days looking through all these pages trying to figure out what was happening. We were losing 40,000 pages a week, but it didn't tell me which ones. So I ended up finding out that some of our home-built tools weren't working as expected, and we had accidentally let those e-commerce categories breed like bunnies, and Google was just simply trying to go, I only need one copy of this page. Yeah. And then I had to sit outside the CTO's office until he could no longer ignore me, propose snapping the site's spine, pulling it off successfully, moving to be the product owner of the front end team.
Wow. Well, I feel like that's a story that you don't hear too often. The content marketer pitching the technical people on technical SEO.
I used to get kicked out of the dev pod so much. Like, the rule was like, you don't interrupt the devs. The devs have their pod. They need to focus. They need to work. Every time you disrupt them, it costs X amount of time to get them back into where they are. So I would sneak in, and the den mother of the dev get a broom, shake me out. But eventually it became like I had a milk crate, and that was a huge badge of honor. Not only did I mostly not get kicked out, but I had my own milk crate. So I could sit with them.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I think we'll talk a little bit more about that, because I think that is, you know, as funny as that story is, it's actually a very true and real experience, right? Of like, content and technical teams are often sort of in this weird relationship where they're not always on the best terms, but they're still trying to work together and figure it out, right?
Yeah, becoming a PO and having to like rally my devs, push them in a direction, and also have requests coming in from marketing, sometimes having to mediate those conversations was very interesting. But to be fair, everybody wants to do good work. Yeah. That is our ultimate goal. I cannot do good work. When you send me tickets like website broke, please help. Marketers, I need you to just be a little bit more specific. Work with me. Same page, guys.
Well, that's why we're here, to bridge some of the gaps and help everyone do their good work together. So yeah, I want to kind of get into the main topic, of course, today, which is technical SEO. So let's just start like at the very beginning, I guess. How would you define technical SEO? And maybe for added context, like, is there a difference between what we consider technical SEO and like just on-page SEO?
I don't know how rankings work. I am not a robot, but I speak bot. content, traditional marketing, like you're presenting to the human. I'm making sure it gets there. Y'all are putting a great driver in a race car. I'm making sure that race car has an engine and not a box of Christmas lights with a rabbit squirrel. Same team.
So what would be sort of the elements of technical SEO, or when you're doing your job, like what are sort of the facets that you're generally dealing with?
I'm generally taking a observed end product in rankings or in index coverage and working backwards. If I'm not helping someone launch something new, if I'm working with my marketing teams, this is usually it. It's going, we have an area that's been impacted. Here is the behavior. Let's find out why. Okay. So if I can know, okay, it's the scope of pages, I can begin to make sure that Google's able to see those pages. Is it a matter of them being technically available that is inhibiting this great content from ranking and bringing people in? Google cannot rank what it can't see. So my job is to make sure it's there.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Yeah. So just to make sure that everyone understands. So when you're talking about like observing behavior, you would say like, okay, hey, all of our pages on this section of the site, the rankings went down, or they're no longer in traffic, or something like that.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Well, so now help us. Let's get into maybe some of the technical elements there. So as you're sort of working backwards and troubleshooting that, what are the specific technical elements that you're sort of looking at? Do you have like a checklist, or how do you kind of work through the problem?
Oh, my best friend is Chrome DevTools. I'm going to go ahead and open that page. I'm going to use I like to have a testing specific one. So there's, I clear the DNS on it regularly. I want to keep it as clean without tracking pixels as possible. No extensions, none. Stop it. And I'm just going to simply open DevTools, set it for if it's primarily crawled as mobile or desktop. You can get that information in the URL inspector in GSC. I'm going to replicate how the page is built. I'm going to look at things like the initial header responses. Hey, this is the very first thing that Google reads when they build a page. Before they read your HTML, they get that 200 response, but it's never just 200. There's a ton of information in that response. Sometimes there's some bad information in there, like a canonical that's pointing towards a dev environment. I've seen it. An X robots no index tag that says, don't go any further. You're not going to index this. So I'm going to start there. I can do that one in the network tab, look at my response headers, and then look at the elements, just the rendered HTML output. There's a whole bunch of places to go through here. I like to simply just get my hands dirty and get hands-on. If it's something I can reproduce, that's great. If it's something that has a tendency to exist, like it works on my machine, now I'm getting into when all the pieces are put together to build a page, something is going wrong. Rendering issues have a tendency to exist, and that's what makes them so hard to track. So maybe you use this one script to put in your buy button on a product page. Well, what happens if that were to fail? Suddenly, that page can't meet a user's transactional intent anymore. You've just shifted the value and the purpose of choosing to return this page in rankings.
Interesting. Yeah. So there's sort of, I guess I'm hearing a couple different maybe buckets here. One is some of the like technical kind of configuration elements, right? So you mentioned things like canonical tags and header codes, which again I think is certainly a little bit above my head. I mean, I know the basics, but and then you.
Well, that's a good point.
What was that?
May I take just a pause and step back?
Yeah, go ahead.
Because I realize I'm talking about all these little elements, and I think the core foundation we need to adapt is Google is code. Code runs in order. It runs in sequential order. When you follow that same pipeline, that's all I'm doing is I'm following the same pipeline they do to build a page and interpreting and seeing it. So all of these technical details. Go on.
Indeed. Yeah, no, that's a great point. I think that's something that we sometimes forget, right? But I was just going to say as well, the other component that you mentioned is, like the actual functional technical pieces of the website can impact the user experience in a certain way. And that can also affect SEO, which is, again, I think something that's easy for us to overlook or maybe not think about when we're thinking about SEO.
Absolutely. It's the battle of functionalities and features versus tech debt. Like, yes, I get it. You want to add this thing onto the page and it's going to be so cool and it's going to do awesome things. It also wants to be loaded directly below the head tag and be a blocking call, which means I have to wait to run to the page until this third party responds.
Right. Right. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. So when we think about, I guess when we're thinking about the technical SEO elements, let's maybe bring it into scope for content people. So I'm guessing a lot of people who are on the stream are probably not tinkering around with the header tags and that kind of stuff too often. When we think about those the technical SEO factors that you see and that you're interacting with, how many of those do you think, or which specific ones maybe will content people come in contact with?
Oh, it depends.
Fair enough. That's the best marketing answer, right?
I think the most prominent one that content folk are likely to come into contact with without realizing it is you're working on a WYSIWYG platform. So you can build really cool, beautiful designs, and you can even add in plugins, right?
Mm-hmm.
Please be aware and consider that every time you add in plugins, you add in more complex designs, you embed things, you are making that page larger and slower. Mm-hmm. So we all want to have the shiniest things, but to have shiny and not to fall over because of it is a balance. So look at that new functionality, figure out how you'll measure what it brings. If I add in this carousel, because I'm going to pretend it's 2003 again, if I add in this carousel, I think the result of that will be people staying on page longer or clicking through these carousel things. You can measure that, and then be curious and measure, when I added it, did it make my page slower? Mm-hmm. Did it make it heavier? Mm-hmm. Let's look at what that impact was, because if your new shiny features are also going to limit the number of people who can interact with them, it may not be worth it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Huh. Yeah. So what I'm hearing there is the overarching factor is kind of the load speed, right? And the content that we put on the page and how we design the page, and those pieces impact the load speed.
Yeah, I would say performance is going to be a good catch-all way of measuring all that. Huh.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. What other factors do sort of content people generally come in contact with that you're dealing with?
Well, you got to tell me, my friend, what kind of contact factors do you come into? You got to remember, I don't know how rankings work. Teach me everything. What do you find to be something where, like, I wish I knew a little bit about the tech for here? I bet you that would be handy.
Sorry, say that one more time.
What do you interact with as a content creator where you go, I wonder if there's a technical ramification of this, or like, I wonder if there's a technical way to do it better. What do you encounter?
Yeah, no. Yeah, I mean, certainly, like multimedia or like anything that we're adding to the content beyond just like words and, and then like the size of the graphics and things like that are certainly, as you mentioned, I think that's something that we're thinking about a lot, and how that's going to impact load speed and that kind of thing. And this is maybe a question, is like, something like, internal linking. I don't know. Do you consider that to be like sort of in the realm of technical SEO, or how does that sort of play into your job description?
Oh, it's absolutely important. We can watch Googlebot when it crawls. It's crawling along concepts, semantic pathways, and it can tell if you know what you're talking about when you mention relative things. So it's like a branch of a tree. You've got the core topic, and then you have branches that move off of it that are related and conceptual to it. So when you interlink to them, when you show that hierarchy and that understanding, that gives you it gives you authority, because you can fully represent not just one page that is the keyword you're trying to rank for, but also provide semantic internal linking to that concept at large, which means a user who landed on that page could then find, do they need to go up or down the tree and get a little bit more broader? Do they want to get more specific and go down the branches?
Mm-hmm. That's great. That's great. Yeah, I think that's super interesting. And I think, a lot of content people are generally familiar with the idea of pillars and hubs, or however whatever terminology you want to use, which I think is sort of what you're describing, or at least it comes from that understanding of how the Google bot interprets our content and our pages, right?
Yeah, so, your classic and conceptual silos are valuable not only for users, but for Googlebot, because they want to, when they're refreshing their understanding about all the pages ranking for this one word, well, if they're all interlinked, that's less pathing to do. It's all related. It's all there for them.
So tell us a little bit about what the best practices are. If you have full control over a client's site and how their internal linking structure is set up, say a blog, how would you structure it? What practices would you use?
Relevancy. Like, don't try and what do they call it when you put all the link juice to one page? It's not relevant. It's not relevant.
Right.
Like, you can put a link for something irrelevant on every single page. Good for you. Is anyone going to click it? Is anyone going to find that valuable? Or is it going to look like you're trying to manipulate a system? We're pretty good at detecting that.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a trick that we see a lot, right? Where it's like, hey, the client wants every blog post to link to this specific product page because they're trying to boost the rankings there or whatever. And you're saying, unless it's relevant, that's probably not, a good practice.
Let me use a product page as an example. Like, my perfect world of linking actually places the links in relation to where a human would be interacting with the page. So it's a product detail page. If you came here to buy, I want the first link you see to be buy, to be add to cart. I want to be able to answer that immediately. You don't need stuff. You don't need to scroll for that. That's why you're here. If you're going to keep scrolling, that means you probably need more information. So maybe you want to see other products that are similar, or like bundles. If you keep scrolling past that, maybe you're not ready to buy yet. So I could show you some buyer's guides. Like, hey, you're trying to pick out the right one. You keep scrolling, maybe just some general blogs or some creative ideas. Yeah. Use that placement relating to, if they stayed on the page and they kept scrolling, they want to engage with you, but the piece they were looking for wasn't what they had seen yet. So they kept scrolling down. Keep that in mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's super interesting. So that now we're getting into sort of informational hierarchy, right?
Yeah,
it's like,
exactly.
Understanding the user, where they're coming in, and then sort of rank ordering information in order in which they are most likely to be interested.
Yeah. Don't make a user scroll down to get to the buy button on a product detail page so you can put a promo for a product that's not related above it. That's dumb. Don't do that. Love you more.
Right. And so when we think about say a blog post, for instance, we're thinking about, okay, I'm writing a blog post about content marketing, and I'm going to link out to presumably some other pages on my site that also talk about content marketing. Does the same, how does that apply there? One of the things that we hear a lot is like, if you're trying to link to your pillar page in the first paragraph or whatever, are some of the practices that people talk about. Can you speak a little bit to that?
That's cute. Make a good page, my friend. That's my advice to you. No, there is no magic formula. Content above the fold is considered the highest priority. If it's relevant there, why didn't you just send them to that page? If you really want that link there, why didn't you just send them there in the first place? If that was the first thing you're going to say is, here's a link.
Yeah.
But respect. If you have a thing that works for you and you have data that supports that it works for you, again, I don't know how rankings work. Don't take my advice.
So I guess just to put a point on that, just for a takeaway for the audience, basically what you're saying is, in your experience, there's not really any sort of magic tricks here where putting the links at the top of the page or the first paragraph or whatever is going to help SEO or help the indexing or anything like that.
No.
Okay. Well, that's good. I feel like that's a good comment.
I would love to see the subtitles for that. Exhausted, no, head shake.
Fair enough. I mean, I think again, that's why these conversations are so valuable, because I think us content people often get sort of these downstream weird best practices that are sort of half truths, right? And so the technical people who are actually looking at the data and looking at how this works, I think can help shed some light on, well, hey, actually, that thing that Neil Patel taught you might not actually be the best practice.
Hey, if you're listening right now and you're following Neil Patel, I want you to know it's going to be okay. There's great communities out there. There's a lot to be said for making things seem scary. And like, if you don't do this, you kick puppies and you don't love your mother. Those are manipulative tactics. You are a marketer. You know how to spot those. And I look forward to the empowered you finding firsthand, reasonable, respectable sources for your decisions. Go you.
That's amazing. Well, I feel like the stream's over now. We just that's the right thing to got right there. No, that is seriously though. That's super helpful.
If you were trying to put up an interstitial when someone leaves that negs them, you're not being a good human, and I think you can do better.
I think we're both just jealous because we're not in our pajamas right now. So sorry. That's the Neil Patel thing. He's like always in pajamas. Sorry.
I know, but it would be the arbitrary marker of power that he would choose. Yeah, that makes sense. That's on brand.
Okay, so I do shifting away from topics related to Neil Patel and pajamas.
But you don't want to talk about a Call of Cthulhu campaign I've done because he was a villain. No, that's not on topic. This is not tabletop gaming time. Let's continue.
Not yet. I want to go back just real quick to the idea. You mentioned. So I think one of the things that we're talking about is sort of like the idea of topical authority, right? Like how do you signal to Google that you're an authority on something? And you mentioned EAT, which just can we define that for anyone who's not familiar?
EAT is a fancy acronym for you know what you're talking about. Again, you are marketers. You can spot when someone hands you copy and clearly did not understand the assignment.
Right.
So it can Google. Mm-hmm. They've read a lot.
Right. Okay. So besides sort of, let's say interlinking your relevant pages, what are the other, I guess, like implementation tactics for demonstrating EAT or like establishing that authority?
Citing your first party sources. I understand the desire to put in that first paragraph a link to your article rather than citing directly to the source. But guess what? In Google's understanding of these concepts and ideas, they know the first party source. And when you link to it, you are directly associating your content with something they've already established and understand as the first party source. So that puts you ahead of the game in terms of processing for how your content relates to an entity that they have a clear scope and understanding of.
That's great. Yeah. So, because I think that's another, maybe this one's a fading misconception, but I think for a long time people thought, I don't want to link out to too many other sites because that's taking away my authority or taking away my link power or whatever.
Taking away your authority when you're talking about something else that someone's the authority on instead of linking them. Okay.
Right. Yeah. But that's great. I mean, that's super to remember as content.
First party sources are our friends. We are not enemies. It is okay. And guess what? When you link to the first party source, then I trust you more. Then I'm not relying on your spin of the first party source's article. Just let me go to it myself. There is nothing that frustrates me more than sites that will keep giving you links on their content, their coverage of an announcement or an update without linking to it. Why would I trust you? I literally, what reason do I have to trust you?
Right. Yeah. I think that's another interesting point that you have there is that like the human experience again mirrors Google's actions, right? How they interpret that content, which, if you're a user, you would want to know where that data came from or where that information was sourced from. Yeah. That's great. That's awesome. Any other practices related to authority, EAT, etc.?
I just always advocate, go ahead and put that JSON LD structured data markup in there. Use it relevantly, but it's a cheat sheet. It's hey, here's what the page is about. Like you're just passing over to the bots. By the way, I'm gonna save you a step. It's pretty handy.
Okay, so we're gonna have to pause on that one and find some things. JSON markup. Let's unpack that.
Okay. So structured data markup is a type cheat sheet. It's a, hey, this is what this is about. That isn't visible to humans. It's visible to bots. JSON LD is one of the languages that you can write it in. It is the preferred one. It's the one I recommend that you do. It has the most capabilities. It's really cool. Work with your team, work with your devs. They can help you on this one. There's great documentation how to use it. But you basically fill out this little script that is a cheat sheet that says, hey, this article is about blank and it talks about these people.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and here's images for it, and here's this and that. That's just a way to, instead of relying entirely on the big parsing process, go hi. And it's also how you get rich results in SERP. It's how you get those stars and all those lovely little bits, because you're not making them go through and read every review and figure out what the average star rating of 150 reviews was. You're going, it's right here.
Right. Okay. And so this is something that lives in the code. So if I'm, writing a blog post in WordPress or whatever, I'm probably not interacting directly with this. It's something that my development team is going to implement for me.
Well, if you're using Yoast, and you probably are, because Jono made a great tool and everybody still uses it, that will generate it for you.
Oh, great. Okay.
Yeah.
And so is that, how does that relate to, I think every content person is at least familiar with, meta descriptions, let's say. Yeah. How does that relate to those?
So it's your OG description or your open graph or whatever it's going to be. That probably is the same text. It's that field used over again. Yeah.
Okay. So it's really just about, again, having sort of that whatever technical implementation to generate those that and have it implemented.
And it's why having an accurate description is far better than having a clickbaity description.
Okay.
No, factually, what is the description of this page? Click and find out.
Right.
No.
Right. Okay, so we can actually signal to Google what the content is about, and then that's going to help them to understand, again, sort of our realm of expertise, let's say, or our where we have authority.
I mean, it is made of the sum of its parts. You can't do one thing and suddenly have it. This is a way to help it. Yeah.
Okay. Is there a way to sort of measure or understand your level of authority or trustworthiness?
They will never show us that one.
Right. So really all we're working with is sort of the end result, which is generally like our ranking, right?
I can put on a tinfoil hat and go down a beautiful technical rabbit hole about Wikidata and citations and properties with you right now. But I don't think it's the right venue.
That'll be part 2. That'll be the follow-up. Okay. Fair enough. All right. So I feel like we've already covered a bunch of really valuable data here. So just to wrap up again, as content people, we're crafting this content. A couple things that we can be thinking about. First and foremost is how we interlink our pages and sort of signal to Google, hey, we don't just have one article about this topic, we have multiple articles. The other thing that you mentioned is, hey, don't be afraid to link out to primary sources. In fact, do that all the time and whenever necessary and possible, because it's going to actually see that as a signal that you are, in fact, basing your data on other, or your content on data or some other source that is reputable. And then lastly, there's this, sort of, I would say, the most technical element that we've discussed so far, which is the schema and the markup stuff, which can be driven partially by tools like Yoast or whatever, and then also implemented in collaboration with our technical SEO friends and developers.
I feel like that's a pretty accurate series of buttons.
Great. Are there any other elements that we didn't cover there in terms of general authority, signaling to Google, hey, we know about this topic that might help us?
I think it's worthwhile anytime you put a page out to go, why? What does it serve? If you have multiple pages on the same concept, are some designed to be informational? Are some designed to be local intent? Are some designed to be transactional? If you don't, then why are you splitting an informational intent across all of these things? Maybe don't fight yourself. Don't try and make pages specifically to rank on a keyword that would compete with each other.
Right. So basically, don't cannibalize yourself. Is that
Yes,
the takeaway there?
exactly. So if
Yeah.
you've got a product page, don't make a blog post that's just talking about the product.
Right.
Maybe curate the product for the Kentucky Derby or whatever event would be engaging to your users. Present it in a new way, as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to creating a different page that matches the same intent that is now competing with itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And so just to again, define for folks who may not be familiar, can you talk a little bit about the sort of the how we classify search intent and sort of what each one means?
Yeah. So you ever ask Google something without wanting an answer? No, you always have a goal of getting an answer, right?
Right.
And some answers are very informational, like how tall is the Eiffel Tower? That's a number. Like where some of them are transactional, like buy blank. Some of them are location based. So oil change. I'm probably looking for an oil change near me. Like there's a layer of information retrieval that is designed to match when this user makes this query. Are they looking to find out, to buy, to find locally, or compare? Like, what is the reason for doing this? It's pretty reasonable then to go, well, if that's how queries work, if that's how humans work, maybe I should make my content work like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So maybe let's just serve up an example for people. So if we're talking about, let's say, like content marketing, right? So you've got a couple different intents there, right? So one, as you said, would be like a transactional, like I'm trying to hire somebody to do content marketing or marketing services. And one would be, I'm looking to learn information about content marketing. So
and it could be looking to learn because you want to get into it, or maybe you need to purchase it and you need more information.
Mm-hmm. So as you're sort of, what steps would you take, or what would be your approach to sort of make sure that we're matching those things without like overlapping or competing with ourselves?
I would look at the piece of content that I'm set to write and go, cool, what's my topic? All right, what's my intent? And then I would look on my site, do a site query, cite your query, and then that keyword, see what comes up and go, oh, that matches the same intent. Because maybe I could just zhuzh up the existing page, add to it, make it stronger, learn from the analytics, make it better. Yeah, pretty simple on that one.
So basically, if there's not an existing page, okay, then maybe create a new one. If there is, then look to maybe enhance that existing page or do something else rather than creating something new.
And also lets me know, oh, where should I link to? Or when I'm, writing my page, I've read through, hopefully, the other articles on my own site about this topic. You go, oh, these two conflict. Oh, this is interesting. Because maybe I can call that out, because maybe now I know that versus is a topic that should be, when they're comparing, added in here.
Interesting. Okay.
But that proves your authority, because if you're contradicting yourself on your own site, is that eat?
Fair enough. Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. And then in terms of sort of understanding or classifying intent, my go-to tip for people is always just like do the search and see what comes back. Do you have any other tips or strategies that you use to sort of classify the intent for a specific keyword or query?
I popped in SEMrush the other day, and they actually will classify it for you, and you can export it in a spreadsheet. I thought that was pretty awesome.
Nice.
Yeah.
So, well, that's there you go. Two ways to do it. Yeah, I'm slow and don't use SEMrush, so
it's not that big. Just do it manually, and also the more you practice spotting this and differentiating it, the better you're going to get at it.
Yeah. So let's go back. We touched a little bit on the idea of load speed and sort of the content itself and the multimedia. Like how do we sort of think about that? How do we balance that? Like, let's say, I want to add a bunch of videos and stuff that's going to make the content better, but I also know that it's going to some extent slow down the content, right? Or slow down the load speed of the site. Yeah. So is there sort of a test, or how do you kind of optimize that?
Come to your team with an honest question. I want to do this, but I'm worried about making it slower. Is there a way to do it without that? Because there is. You can use basically a facade for your YouTube embeds that will allow it to load and achieve, be really good for your core vitals, And then when they interact, the video is right there and available. Like, that's an option. So sometimes it doesn't have to be, well, I need this, so they're going to have to deal. It could be, hey, do you know where to do this better?
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So there's some technical tricks that we can implement to sort of get the best of both worlds there.
And it's okay to you're not coming with a, I demand this. It's, hey, I want to know how to do this better. Do you have an idea?
Right.
It's cool to go, look, I have all of the EAT on my content marketing copy, but I don't have the EAT here. It's okay. Like, the ability to go, I don't know. That's how you are a good human and a good teammate.
I like how the technical SEO thing is really just about being a nice person. Isn't that what it all comes down to, right?
Hey, Googlebot's priority 0 is being a good citizen of the web. So we inherit it from that.
There you go. Yeah. Do you have any, just to be a pain, do you have any tips for people who maybe don't have a technical team that they can rely on for this kind of, for that piece of it?
Yeah. Get on SEO Twitter, get on the Google Webmaster forums, just ask people. Like, you would be amazed at how open and giving and excited people are to help each other out. I love that I've got to see SEO switch from a world of peacocking Neil Patel's with proprietary information and won't set a source, and if you leave the site, you kick puppies, to, I understand that I don't even know how rankings work. There is no way for me to know all of the technical nuances, specificities across this ocean that is search, and the ways it evolves and shows up in new places and changes so quickly. Even if I could learn everything, there would be a release and I would be out of date. So the ability to go, hey, can I ask you a question? Hey, what do you think of this? Asking in these places where people want to collaborate and help. Some of the most amazing giving people are those who created Core of Vitals. The team behind that, they will help you in a heartbeat. They write great content all the time on web.dev. My best advice for you, be curious, ask questions. There are no dumb questions. In tech SEO, the entire idea is, yeah, I think X does Y, but I'm going to take a step back and actually measure it. Does X do? Oh, no. Where did Q come from?
Yeah. Great. Okay. That's I think that's a great point. Yeah. There's a lot to learn out there, and a lot of great people who will openly share information on how we can implement these best practices. That's great. Let's see. A couple questions. Well, I guess, just, it's kind of like a broad question, but like, what are some of the, I guess, like, technical SEO mistakes that you see most frequently, and especially, from a marketing perspective, like, say, within the blog or things like that?
Okay. So, not checking it when it's live on the site.
Okay.
It sounds like the silliest thing, but after you hit publish, just load the page and interact with it yourself, especially if it's interactive and it's designed to do a thing. Go through, click the links. If you've set up something that has like a conversion path, just make sure you can get all the way through. Yeah. It's worth at least offering transparency. So if you've got a dev team and you're publishing stuff over on your blog and you added in a new widget because you for some reason saw the authority, security, guys, widgets are a security issue. All right. You are now trusting a piece of code that you don't own. Just put on that little bit of stranger danger when you start vetting those. But let your team know. Be like, hey, I added this on here. Or better yet, before you push anything live, just go, hey, could you take a look? I'd love to get your insight. And guess what? You're making allies when you do that too, because you're going, I understand what you do is difficult and important and worth respect. I would love to see what you think of this. And maybe they'll go, I love this content, but there's a way for us to go ahead and actually make it so it's not going to hurt the page load so much. So be proactive. Don't wait until go live and be like, hey, do the thing. That's terrible. I see a lot of content marketers get frustrated that they can't get things implemented. This is the most common thing. And I would say my tip to you is learn how your dev team works. You can go to stand up. You don't have to say anything. Actually, I encourage you, don't say anything. Just sit and watch. Watch how it works. Watch when they go ahead and decide what tickets to work on. What does that look like? Because if you give me a task to complete, but you don't tell me what done means or what good means, I'm guessing. If you don't tell me how to test it, I can't make sure it's what you wanted.
Right.
So when you submit a request, learn what format they work in. Do they take a user story? So as content, I want to add in this new widget in order to embed this type of video onto the site. This is done when it's embedded and it doesn't tank our performance. Or better yet, it's done when it's embedded, or you tell me I can't embed it because it'll tank my performance. You know? How would I test it? Here we go. Give the tools. Be collaborative. It's a great thing.
Yeah. That's again another great reminder. Are there, when people aren't checking the site or looking at it when it goes live, etc. Are there common things, I mean, that I guess are wrong that people should have fixed or changed or done differently?
I mean, broken content's pretty common. CTA is not working correctly. People who put interstitials on a page, you need to have a whole different conversation. But hey, let's make sure people can exit them and that they don't re-trigger every 30 seconds. I've seen this.
Yeah.
When you publish something, how are you measuring it was successful?
Right.
That's just a good question to ask yourself. What does success mean for this page? What does good mean?
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. I'd love to just kind of go through some of the things that we've just touched on, and maybe you can just give us kind of a short understanding of or a short version of your understanding of sort of how that impacts SEO and maybe or best practices or how people should approach those things. So one that we hear a lot about is like broken links. So like having broken links on your site.
Broken links are just a bad user experience. You know, like, oh, I really want to learn about that. Oh, the page isn't there. That's a bummer. Or worse yet, like I'm trying to actually make a conversion and then there's a 404 or there's a 404 for a resource needed for the interaction for me to convert. And because that's super, super hidden, you know, they have no way of knowing. Like I keep clicking it, but it's not opening. What is this? Like I wanted to sign up, but it won't let me. What's that deal?
And do you have any evidence or data about how that impacts SEO specifically?
So here's the thing. I work with the nuts and bolts. I work with the HTTP header is connected to the crawl DOM. The crawl DOM is connected to the resource list. Way down the funnel, down the pipeline, I get the content to index. I make sure it's all there, and it goes into Google's index processing system. There are then 200, 2,000, 2 million, I don't know, number of factors. So the idea of measuring a technical change in ranking is a little bit like taking your temperature by walking into the ocean. Is that really effective? Maybe could you measure it in a different way? Is there something more direct and immediate? You can keep that secondary KPI, but should that be your primary means of measurement? When Google releases new experiments every day, new features every day, core updates, are there a lot of factors in there that you don't even know about and now you're deciding to judge your success on?
Right. That makes sense.
Oftentimes there's a more direct way of measuring it. You could look at, have I improved? If you're trying to improve your internal linking, let's look at how many of our pages are getting bot hits. Like, are the bots actually requesting the content? If the bots aren't requesting the content, that means they're not even interested. Why could that be? What could we do? Get a technical crawler out. Do I have orphan pages? If I don't have any internal linking, because the page that linked to it now 404s, it's an ecosystem.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. What about, so this is like a very specific question, but I'd love to get your take on it.
Yeah.
I've seen people kind of go back and forth on this, like a lot of people using WordPress. You've got like these category pages and tag pages and stuff that get generated when you're using the category and tag systems. Do you have a general best practice from a technical SEO perspective? Like a lot of people like no index those pages, etc. What's your take on that?
I'm gonna first caveat with it depends. All right, don't shoot me.
Yep,
The second one, assuming that people have a reason to come and look for a collection of articles about a topic on your site. It's relevant. Pick one or the other. I like the functionalities traditionally associated with categories to be my indexable versions. Tags can be very useful for humans who have, they want to move sideways through that, get a little bit more nuanced, but don't index both, because now we have indexable combinations of them and it becomes like two little bunnies who've bred, and suddenly you're claiming you've got 1,000 pages on this topic that you're so authoritative on, but they're all the same thing. So I don't believe that you have any authority, sir.
Okay. So you're sort of, so sort of the impact there is like you're kind of diluting your authority by using both of those and letting them sort of run rampant, if you will.
Yeah. Well, and what value, like, is there a use case? If you have a use case for it, if you have these type of humans want to do this thing, cool, that's an exception, because there are no rules in SEO. It depends for a reason.
Right.
Yeah. If you're an authority on something and you have 1,000 pages about it, you would be an authority because you have 1,000 unique pages that each provide value and answer intent. If you have 1,000 pages and 990 of them are the same content in one article in front of the other, no, you're buffaloing that you know about this. Shame on you.
Right. That actually just reminded me too. One of the topics, one of the questions that we had pop up in the community in the top of the funnel recently, is somebody was talking about the idea of basically going back and deleting content that was not ranking. Can you talk a little bit about that and maybe what you would consider to be kind of best practice or how you usually approach that? What factors go into it?
I mean, that's a little bit like throwing away a vacuum because it's not working, but not making sure that it was plugged in when you tried.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Maybe you find out why it's not working.
Right.
Hey, is it indexed? Is it indexed but not getting traffic?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, it's indexed then. Let's look at what content's indexed. Oh no, it's indexed, but this really important thing like the buy button isn't on it, so it's not indexed to answer transactional intent. Mm-hmm. Now I know. Maybe I can just make sure that buy button's there, and suddenly it answers transactional intent again. All I had to do is turn it off and turn it back on again. Why would I throw it out?
Right. How do you think about that in relation to sort of the idea of like overlap or cannibalization? So let's say I've been blogging about content marketing for the last 10 years, and I've got a bunch of content that is sort of competes with, let's say, my pillar page about content marketing or whatever. How do you sort of assess that, or how do you make a decision about what to do with that content?
Could you unify them and make it one mecha suit, like Power Rangers? They all team up together and you've got this really amazing one? Is that an option? That sounds like a great win. Really low lift.
Right.
Maybe does this one, maybe if I take this chunk out of this one and put it over here and then really focus this page to be a comparison instead of just vague information, then it's more specialized, Because content marketing is a broad term and there's lots of things within it. So maybe more specificity, less specificity, more focused to informational, more focused to transactional. Yeah.
Is there any set of factors where you would look at a piece of content and say, hey, this is just not doing anything for you. There's not really anything you can do with it. You should just delete it.
It is not indexed. It is not getting traffic. It is not valuable. There's no query volume for it. We like to find out why it's sick before just calling it. But if it's out of date, let's get rid of it. If it's not relevant anymore, let's get rid of it. If it's not related to anything else, I don't even do that. Why is this here?
That's actually a good point. Maybe like a nuance on the topic that we were discussing before. Let's say, yeah, I've been doing content marketing forever, and now I want to, I don't know, my business changes, and now I'm talking about PPC ads or whatever. Is it beneficial to me to go back and sort of remove the stuff about content marketing on my site?
Couldn't I just leverage it instead?
In what way?
There's got to be some good information in there. If I were able to just take, like, I'm looking at the same idea of acquisition, and does content play into how paid ads work? Like, there's got to be some overlap there, right? I personally don't know, and I'm not going to insult anyone by assuming I do, but I can't imagine that if you've built up so much authority and you've pivoted, maybe you're, did you get amnesia and start all over again? Or was there like a reasonable series of steps that led from one position to another? If so, could that be reflected in your content in a way that shows even the fuller breadth of your knowledge? Not only am I PPC, but I am PPC that is boss in content marketing. And let's talk about how these things relate.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. So there's sort of like a transition strategy that you might want to implement in that case. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
You as a human went through the transition. Maybe other people are looking for information about how that works.
Totally. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Great. A couple other sort of specific topics that I'd love to dig into in our last couple minutes here. One is canonical pages. So you mentioned this a couple of times. First of all, can you just give a quick primer on the topic and what it means and how they're used?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I'm going to blow all of your minds. I know we think of Googlebot as being this crazy giant monolith, like a black box, and things come out of it and sky gods.
That's how it works.
Googlebot's just a user agent. That's it. It's what requests information on the internet. And it has to go ahead and put all these different copies together. So when it requests something, the address it was requested at, that's a unique asset. That's brand new. So that includes parameters, cases changing, everything else. And then it has to go through a pipeline and it has to get deduplicated so that they're only keeping one copy of it. Because otherwise, it's not sustainable for them to crawl the web. If they kept every variation of every page they ever encountered, woof.
Right.
So the canonical element is you providing a technical signal that says the primary copy of this content is at this URL.
Okay.
That's the protocol. Is it secure, non-secure? Is it dubs, non-dubs? Is it capitalized? Is it lowercase?
Okay.
All of it. Yeah. Oh, I also just saw something. Hey guys, stop putting spaces and stuff in your address bars. Like, you want to use safe characters. That is a big issue that I see with a lot of content teams. Normalize that. Use a hyphen. Be cool.
That's great. No, that's actually good. So that's like URL structure, right? Is that
yes.
Yeah.
Use safe characters because a space isn't a safe character and it has to go through encoding in order to be resolved as a safe one. And sometimes it doesn't work right. Sometimes it breaks. Like an ampersand, if you ever see where it's like percentage 20, all those crazy numbers, that's them doing their best to try and figure out what you meant. So just use safe characters instead and make everyone's life easier.
Great. So yeah, going back to canonicals, what are some use cases where those are sort of like a critical element, or maybe where people are listing them and they should have them?
Do you have a page on the internet?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Declare what the canonical is.
Okay. So every page should have a canonical, and
if I can add a parameter on that and it resolves, yeah.
Okay. Great. So that's a good like blanket best practice for everyone is that you should sort of be signaling to Google, hey, this is the main version.
Yeah.
And then how does that relate to say, if you do have content that is similar, or say a variation of content that's made for different audiences or something like that? Like, do you also use canonical tags there?
Unless they are answering the same intent, the same audience, but the same content, they can be their own asset. They're fine.
Okay. Yeah. So there's no risk in say I've got two, say I've got two blog posts and they're very similar, but one is, targeting, men and one's targeting women or whatever.
They're different. They're different audiences you're answering questions for.
Okay. So from an SEO perspective, it's not like a risk of them competing or cannibalizing.
I mean, you are running like a constant banner on the bottom there, whereas like Jamie does not speak for all of the internet, does not know all the answers, right? That's there.
Yes. Understood. Yeah.
There's many factors in there, but yeah, I stand by you are answering the same intent and topic, but for different audiences. Those are different pieces of content. Good.
That's good. That's good to know. Well, we're just like down to our last final seconds here. So
Yeah.
I just want to say, Jamie, thank you again so much. I know we
you.
kind of got to a rapid fire here at the end, so I appreciate you bearing with me all these questions. And yeah, is there real quick? Do you have any, I guess, any where people should check you out or anything that you'd like to mention to the folks on the stream?
Come be my friend on Twitter. SEO Twitter is a beautiful place. I'm at jammer_volts. And you'll find that we're quite lovely people who are very willing to help each other out. I am in the traffic think tank community, though I am, I think, in 18 Slacks at this point. So there's a reason I write the newsletter instead. Subscribe to that newsletter. I get to be snarky and I hope somewhat delightful. We just hit 1,000 subscribers, which, you know what? You're right, content teams, those are low numbers, but there's never been like any kind of paid push behind it. So that feels pretty awesome. It's just 1,000 people who are like, yeah, no, I like this and I'm going to read it.
That's awesome.
Here for it.
Yeah, congratulations.
I'm part of the Deep Crawl crew. We do a lot of webinars and very cool things. There's going to be a new edition of my passion project. It's called Human First. It's a webinar series where we talk about digital ethics. We'll be talking accessibility coming up here in May. Please come join us for that.
That's awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you again so much, Jamie, and folks on the stream. I know, there's a billion technical topics that we probably did not cover in specific use case and things. So if you do have additional questions about technical SEO topics, feel free to shoot them to me. Or again, I'm sure Jamie will be happy to respond to you on Twitter or in the Traffic Think Tank crew or group. Last final shout outs from my side. Again, please like and subscribe here on YouTube to help other people find our content and also be notified of upcoming sessions. If you're not already a member of our community, yesoptimist.com/tofu, top of the funnel, please join. And one final shout out to our friends at Clearscope. Thank you so much for sponsoring. If you haven't already, check out the message and the link in the description below. All right, that's all for today. Thank you all so much. Thank you again, Jamie, so much for your time. Really appreciate you, and hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you all.
Bye.